So I want you to take a second right now and consider the five people that you associate with the most often. And now I want you to consider if they're actually good for you, which is kind of like harsh and blunt and right to the point. But honestly, in my experience, I've had a lot of trouble dealing with this, I guess. And like, a perfect example of this is they say like in recovery communities as far as drug and alcohol addiction goes that you need to change like people, places and things, which don't get me like misconstrued or don't get it misconstrued. You don't have to do that. What I'm saying is you're not going to like they're not going to help themselves by going back to the same people that they were doing bad stuff with. If you don't want to do drugs anymore, then don't hang out with people that do drugs. It's mind-blowingly simple, but it's also mind-blowingly common, even from my own experience, that people don't follow that, train of thought. So, I had to have like a really harsh, realization essentially in my life that if I wanted to get places that I'd never been before, such as, academically or in the gym or even just like intellectually, I had to hang out with people that shared those same goals and same interests. Like, because I didn't have very much self-discipline and I wasn't very motivated or, things like that, or like I hadn't gotten to where I wanted to in school yet, I started to hang out with people and seek out people that had reached those goals. And so, it kind of is cheesy again, but it rubs off on you. Like, whenever I started to surround myself with people that were extremely positive and driven, and they had like very clear goals and they had very healthy habits, I started to develop those habits. Whereas before, I couldn't break out of the shell that I had allowed myself to pretty much live in. And what I mean by that is, whenever I was hanging around people that partied all the time and like smoked weed and stuff like that, go figure, like that's what I do, or that's what I would do. And it makes total sense to that, like, why that is. Because nobody wants to, when you find a group, you form an identity with it. It's almost like a family. So if you're the one in that group that starts doing something different, even if it's positive, you're still changing the dynamic of the group. And not only is that uncomfortable for you, which makes it unlikely that you're going to sustain that change or that drive, but the other people of the group also don't respond well to the expectations that you set on yourself, because indirectly it sets the expectations for them too, and they're far more likely to try and bring you down than to support you. And that's like a real shame, because sometimes you find these people in your life that you surround yourself with and you convince yourself that they're like your friends and they want the best for you, but really, do they? Like, whenever you say like, oh, I don't want to go out drinking, like I'm really tired from work and I really need to catch up on some sleep, or I really need to study, and instead of saying I understand, like that's true, like you should do the responsible thing, they drag you out instead and guilt you into it. That's not a good friend, And like a good example of this right now for me, well, not at this exact moment, but one of my best friends just decided that in his own self-interest that he was going to, or not self-interest, but I mean best interest, interchangeable, but that he was going to move from PA down to Florida just for a fresh new start. And like, that sucks, because he's like my boy. Like, shout out to Taylor Jones. But, I knew as his friend, like that was the best thing for him. So I full-heartedly support it. Like, it would be selfish for me to try and talk him into staying, especially because, I mean, realistically, I didn't even see him that often. But still, that is like an example of how you can be a good friend. Like, just because, their, goals and things don't match up with yours doesn't mean that you shouldn't support it. If it's gonna help them better their lives, then that's what you should do. And that's what I have now. Like, I don't have anybody in my life right now that tries to bring me down at all. And it's no coincidence that that is why I'm succeeding right now. And I feel so supported and I'm so happy with my social group. Like, none of my friends right now are people that are in my support network will ever sugarcoat stuff for me. Which, I get pissed at first, but then I realize, like, that's exactly what I need to hear. Like, they're not going to allow me to just live in some, complete state of denial just so I feel comfortable in that moment. they would rather, risk some kind of confrontation, but like have that knowledge in the back of their head that I'm going to thank them later, Like for an example, my other friend, shout out to Sydney, told me straight up that I suck at communicating. And I realized, or, at first I lashed out at that. But then I had the realization, after thinking about it, I wouldn't go so far to say I suck, but I'm not nearly as good as I thought I was. And that's stuff I need to hear. Like if I'm doing something stupid, it benefits me to have friends that'll speak up and say, "Hey, get your shit together, man. Like you're just being a total idiot right now." And honestly, I am an idiot. I do dumb shit all the time. So I'm really grateful to have friends that kind of help me rein it in. And I think that's what everybody should strive for. If you see somebody that has things you want, you should hang out with those people. Like, there's a reason that very successful people hang out with very successful people, and there's a reason for any social group. Like I could list them for this whole, the rest of eternity, honestly. Like people hang out with people with similar interests. But if your interests change, then it sucks kind of in a way. I'm not saying you have to cut ties completely. Like I have plenty of friends who have different goals than I do right now, but I still choose to actively surround myself with people with similar goals and similar points in our lives that are, doing similar things. And not only that, but like I mentioned before, they're doing things that I want. Like I try to be, this is not very hard. I try to be like, not like the dumbest guy in the room, but I try really hard not to be the smartest guy in any room. And I used to really like doing that, trying to be that. Like I would be in college and stuff, but like come home and hang out with like a bunch of people that just partied and smoked and all that. And I felt like better about myself because I could say, oh, like you guys are just doing this and like, yeah, I'm hanging out with you, but like I'm doing big things in college. Meanwhile, I wasn't. But, subconsciously, maybe even consciously, it made me feel better. It made me feel like I was doing nothing wrong. So I didn't have to change anything. And that's a shame. I was really doing myself a disservice by, participating in behaviors like that. So, I just can't really stress enough how important the people you surround yourself with are. I mean, it's cliche, but you are like a product of your environment. Honestly, like you really are. There is like the nature versus nurture debate, but like whatever. There's some truth to that too. But really, like, it's insanely hard to hang out with a group of people and not develop the same kinds of behaviors and mannerisms and perspectives as they have. Because we, as formerly like living in packs and herds or whatever you would like to call them, we like to develop like this group like cohesion. So if you hang out with people that are better than you, like quote unquote better than you, you'll develop those habits because nobody wants to feel different as much as you think you might want to. Like your brain will wire you to mirror things that these people around you are doing. And the same goes for the opposite end of the spectrum. If you like, that's why I've avoided in the past hanging out with people that smoke weed and like play video games constantly. Like, I don't really have anything wrong with that, but I don't smoke weed, but I know that if I started hanging out with people like that, it was only a matter of time before I started smoking weed. I started playing video games all the time. I stopped going to the gym. It would just snowball. Like you fall into kind of like a cookie cutter scenario where you aren't just like an individual. I mean, obviously you're an individual, but whenever you are a part of a group of friends, like that's the whole, like that's the singularity, I guess you could say. Like, I guess you could say it like that. But you know what I mean. Like you're like you're like a gear or a cog in like a bigger system. And all those cogs tend to start to fit together, and you can use it to help you or hinder you. I mean, if you're scared of change and you're scared of growing, then of course, like, that's sad, but be my guest. Keep hanging out with the same people that are dragging you down and not supporting you, and don't set expectations for yourself. But if you really want to get somewhere, not that I'm like this all powerful guru of, mental health and fortitude, but follow suit to what I did. If I can do it, anybody can do it. It's really easy. You just hang out with new people that don't suck. Very simple equation. So, today I challenge you guys to just examine your friends and examine what they really bring to the table for you. And are they really truly friends that are trying to help you be better? Or are they just really convenient for you and are there to co-sign your bullshit because you're scared to go into the unknown and actually make yourself grow? So, thanks for watching.